The Prince by Niccolo Machiavelli. Chapter 4. When the kingdom of Darius, conquered by Alexander, did not, on Alexander's death, rebel against his successors. Alexander the Great, having achieved the conquest of Asia in a few years, and dying before he had well entered on possession, it might have been expected, having regard to the difficulty of preserving newly acquired states, that on his death the whole country would rise in revolt. Nevertheless, his successors were able to keep their hold, and found in doing so no other difficulty than arose from their own ambition and mutual jealousies. If anyone think this strange and asks the cause, I answer that all the princedoms of which we have record have been governed in one or other of two ways, either by a sole prince, all others being his servants permitted by his grace and favour to assist in governing the kingdoms as his ministers, or else by a prince with his barons who hold their rank, not by the favour of a superior lord, but by antiquity of blood, and who have their states and subjects of their own, who recognize them as their rulers and entertain for them a natural affection. States governed by a sole prince and by his servants vest in him a more complete authority, because throughout the land none but he is recognized as sovereign, and if obedience be yielded to any others, it is yielded as to his ministers and officers, for whom personally no special love is felt. Of these two forms of government we have examples in our own days, in the Turk and the King of France. The whole Turkish Empire is governed by a sole prince, all others being his slaves. Dividing his kingdom into sanjaks, he sends thither different governors, whom he shifts and changes at his pleasure. The King of France, on the other hand, is surrounded by a multitude of nobles of ancient descent, each acknowledged and loved by his subjects of his own, and each asserting a precedence and rank of which the king can deprive him only at his peril. He, therefore, who considers the different character of these two states, will perceive that it would be difficult to gain possession of that of the Turk, but that once won, it might be easily held. The obstacles to its conquest are that the invader cannot be called in by a native nobility, nor expect his enterprise to be aided by the defection of those whom the sovereign has around him. And this for the various reasons already given, namely, that all being slaves and under obligations, they are not easily corrupted, or if corrupted, can render little assistance, being unable, as I have already explained, to carry the people with them. Whoever, therefore, attacks the Turk must reckon on fighting a united people, and must trust rather to his own strength than to the visions on the other side. But where his adversary, once overcome and defeated in the field, so that he could not repair his armies, no cause for anxiety would remain, except in the family of the prince, which being extirpated, there would be none else to fear. For since all beside are without credit with the people, the invader, as before his victory he had nothing to hope from them, so after it has nothing to dread. But the contrary is the case in kingdoms governed like that of France, into which, because men who are discontented and desirous of change are always to be found, you may readily procure an entrance by gaining over some baron of the realm. Such persons, for the reasons already given, are able to open the way to you for the invasion of their country and to render its conquest easy. But afterwards, the effort to hold your ground involves you in endless difficulties, as well in respect of those who have helped you, as of those whom you have overthrown. Nor will it be enough to have destroyed the family of the prince, since all those other lords remain to put themselves at the head of new movements, whom being unable either to content or to destroy, you lose the state whenever occasion serves them. Now, if you examine the nature of the government of Darius, you will find that it resembled that of the Turk, and, consequently, that it was necessary for Alexander, first of all, to defeat him utterly and strip him of his dominions, after which defeat, Darius having died, the country, for the causes above explained, was permanently secured to Alexander, and had his successors continued united, they might have enjoyed it undisturbed, since there arose no disorders in that kingdom, save those of their own creating. But kingdoms ordered like that of France cannot be retained with the same ease, hence the repeated risings of Spain, Gaul, and Greece against the Romans, resulting from the number of small princedoms of which these provinces were made up. For while the memory of these lasted, the Romans could never think their tenure safe. But when that memory was worn out by the authority and long continuance of their rule, they gained a secure hold, and were able afterwards in their contests among themselves, each to carry with him some portion of these provinces, according as each had acquired influence there. For these, on the extinction of the line of their old princes, came to recognize no other lords than the Romans. Bearing all this in mind, no one need wonder at the ease wherewith Alexander was able to lay a firm hold on Asia, nor that Pyrrhus and many others found difficulty in preserving other acquisitions, since that arose, not from the less or greater merit of the conquerors, but from the different character of the states with which they had to deal. Chapter 5. How cities or provinces which before their acquisition had lived under their own laws are to be governed. When a newly acquired state has been accustomed, as I have said, to live under its own laws and in freedom, there are three methods whereby it may be held. The first is to destroy it. The second, to go and reside there in person. The third, to suffer it to live on under its own laws, subjecting it to a tribute and entrusting its government to a few of the inhabitants who will keep the rest your friends. Such a government, since it is the creature of the new prince, will see that it cannot stand with his protection and support, and must therefore do all it can to maintain him, and a city accustomed to live in freedom, if it is to be preserved at all, is more easily controlled through its own citizens than in any other way. We have examples of all these methods in the histories of the Spartans and the Romans. The Spartans held Athens and Thebes by creating oligarchies in these cities, yet lost them in the end. The Romans, to retain Capua, Carthage, and Numidia, destroyed them and never lost them. On the other hand, when they thought to hold Greece as the Spartans held it, leaving it its freedoms and allowing it to be governed by its own laws, they failed, and had to destroy many cities of that province before they could secure it. For, in truth, there is no sure way of holding other than by destroying. And whoever becomes master of a city accustomed to live in freedom and does not destroy it may reckon on being destroyed by it. For if it should rebel, it can always screen itself under the name of liberty and its ancient laws, which no length of time nor any benefits conferred will ever cause it to forget. And do what you will, and take what care you may, unless the inhabitants be scattered and dispersed, this name, in the old order of things, will never cease to be remembered, but will at once be turned against you whenever misfortune overtakes you, as when Pisa rose against the Florentines after 100 years of servitude. If, however, the newly acquired city or province has been accustomed to live under a prince, and his line is extinguished, it will be impossible for the citizens, used on the one hand to obey, and deprived on the other of their old ruler, to agree to choose a leader from among themselves. And as they know not how to live as freemen, and are therefore slow to take up arms, a stranger may rarely gain them over and attach them to his cause. But in republics there is a stronger vitality, a fiercer hatred, a keener thirst for revenge. The memory of their former freedom will not let them rest, so that the safest course is either to destroy them or to go and live in them. Chapter 6. Of new princedoms which a prince acquires with his own arms and by merit. Let no man marvel if in what I am about to say concerning princedoms wholly new, both as regards the prince and the form of government, I cite the highest examples. For since men for the most part follow in the footsteps and imitate the actions of others, and yet are unable to adhere exactly to those paths which others have taken, or to attain to the virtues of those whom they would resemble, the wise men should always follow the roads that have been trodden by the great, and imitate those who have most excelled, so that if he cannot reach their perfection, he may at least acquire something of its savour. Acting in this like the skilful archer, who seeing that the object he would hit is distant, and knowing the range of his bow, takes aim above the destined mark, not desiring that his arrow should strike so high, but that flying high it may alight at the point intended. I say, then, that entirely new princedoms, where the prince himself is new, the difficulty of maintaining possession varies with the greater or less ability of him who acquires possession, and because the mere fact of a private person rising to be a prince presupposes either merit or good fortune, it will be seen that the presence of one or other of these two conditions lessens, to some extent, many difficulties. And yet, he who is less beholden to fortune has often in the end the better success, and it may be for the advantage of a prince that, from his having no other territories, he is obliged to reside in person in the state which he has acquired. Looking first to those who have become princes by their own merit, and not by their good fortune, I say that the most excellent among them are Moses, Cyrus, Romulus, Theseus, and the like. And though perhaps I ought not to name Moses, he being merely an instrument for carrying out the divine commands, he is still to be admired for those qualities which have made him worthy to converse with God. But if we consider Cyrus and the others who have acquired or founded kingdoms, they will all be seen to be admirable, if their actions and the particular institutions of which they were the authors be studied, they will be found not to differ from those of Moses, instructed though he was by so great a teacher. Moreover, on examining their lives and actions, we shall see that they were debtors to fortune for nothing beyond the opportunity which enabled them to shape things as they pleased, without which the force of their spirit would have been spent in vain. As on the other hand, opportunity would have offered itself in vain, had the capacity for turning it to account been wanting. It was necessary, therefore, that Moses should find the children of Israel in bondage in Egypt, and oppressed by the Egyptians, in order that they might be disposed to follow him, and so escape from their servitude. It was fortunate for Romulus that he found no home in Alba, but was exposed at the time of his birth to the end that he might become king and founder of the city of Rome. It was necessary that Cyrus should find the Persians discontented with the rule of the Medes, and the Medes enervated and effeminate from a prolonged peace. Nor could Theseus have displayed his great qualities had he not found the Athenians disunited and dispersed. But while it was their opportunities that made these men fortunate, it was their own merit that enabled them to recognize these opportunities and turn them to account to the glory and prosperity of their country. They who come to the princedom, as these did by virtuous paths, acquire with difficulty but keep with ease. The difficulties which they have in acquiring arise mainly from the new laws and institutions which they are forced to introduce in founding and securing their government. And let it be noted that there is no more delicate matter to take in hand, nor more dangerous to conduct, nor more doubtful in its success, than to set up as a leader in the introduction of changes. For he who innovates will have for his enemies all those who are well off under the existing order of things, and only lukewarm support in those who might be better off under the new. This lukewarm temper arises partly from the fear of adversaries who have the laws on their side, and partly from the incredulity of mankind, who will never admit the merit of anything new, until they have seen it proved by the event. The result, however, is that whenever the enemies of change make an attack, they do so with all the zeal of partisans, while the others defend themselves so feebly as to endanger both themselves and their cause. But to get a clearer understanding of this part of our subject, we must look whether these innovators can stand alone, or whether they depend for aid upon others. In other words, whether to carry out their ends they must resort to entreaty, or can prevail by force. In the former case, they always fare badly and bring nothing to a successful issue. But when they depend upon their own resources and can employ force, they seldom fail. Hence, it comes that all armed prophets have been victorious, and all unarmed prophets have been destroyed. For, besides what has been said, it should be borne in mind that the temper of the multitude is fickle, and that while it is easy to persuade them of a thing, it is hard to fix them in that persuasion. Wherefore, matters should be so ordered that when men no longer believe of their own accord, they may be compelled to believe by force. Moses, Cyrus, Theseus, and Romulus could never have made their own ordinances be observed for any length of time had they been unarmed, as was the case in our own days. With the friar Girolamo Savonarola, whose new institutions came to nothing so soon as the multitude began to waver in their faith, since he had not the means to keep those who had been believers steadfast in their belief, or to make unbelievers believe. Such persons, therefore, have great difficulty in carrying out their designs, but all their difficulties are on the road, and may be overcome by courage. Having conquered these, and coming to be held in reverence, and having destroyed all who were jealous of their influence, they remain powerful, safe, honored, and prosperous. To the great examples cited above, I would add one other, of less note indeed, but assuredly bearing some proportion to them, and which may stand for all others of a like character. I mean the example of Hiero the Syracusan. He from a private station rose to be Prince of Syracuse, and he too was indebted to fortune only for his opportunity. For the Syracusans, being oppressed, chose him to be their captain, which office he so discharged as deservedly to be made their king. For even while a private citizen, his merit was so remarkable that one who writes of him says he liked nothing that a king should have save the kingdom. Doing away with the old army, he organized the new, abandoned existing alliances, and assumed new allies, and with an army and allies of his own, was able on that foundation to build what superstructure he pleased, having trouble enough in acquiring, but none in preserving what he had acquired.